working on my little electronics box containment unit, I decided to put a drawer in here, and it's just going to be a pull-out, nothing special. I guess except the fact that it's made out of cedar. I guess that's special if you like cedar. It smells really good, and it fits in there. That's all that matters to me. I think I'm going to put it on the top though, and mount a complete board across the top so that I can put some lights inside. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but the idea is to have a box that I can essentially take out and then set up on its nice little stand, and fold down the front and have a small work area. I suppose also the top could be the work area. This was my electronics box, and I really liked this box. Unfortunately, several years of use have made the latch break right here, and it's no longer functional for what I have to do it. So what's in the box? I suppose that's always a good question as far as that goes. You know, I have components, resistors, some diodes and stuff. Lots and lots of resistors. And then I have some jacks and some boards and some hookups, capacitors, lots and lots of switches, solder, several different types of solder, parts I've salvaged off of things that I thought would be useful, parts of a prank I pulled on somebody a couple years ago, more connectors, and looks like a servo, and a whole bunch of little connectors and their hookups. I've got some parts down here to some trash pieces that I salvaged, fan grills, breakout boards, and more switches. Actually, these are controllers. Quite some time ago, my brother gave me a broken, or was it may not have been my brother, but it was a broken remote that somebody gave me. Pretty sure it was my brother that gave it to me, and it was broken, and I worked really hard to try to get it fixed, because he said, here, you can have this, maybe you can get it fixed. And it didn't work. Anyways, I salvaged these little switches off of there, and they're very nice. They're just potentiometers. I don't know if they're, get into the light there. It's just a potentiometer, but you know, if you could wire them into a servo and make them follow the action of the servo. Anyways, there's a handful of servos in there. These are amplifiers, so that you know, people spend money and buy the portable, like, you know, speakers for their phones and stuff. Well, that is an amplifier, that little chip there, and the red and black is a battery. The green and black is the input, and the speaker wire, go figure, is for the speakers. And you just run it off of anywhere between 9 and 12 volts, and you can run that out. And you know, it's not that hard to solder in together. And it costs about, I don't know, there might be $1's worth of components on this board. So maybe it costs $2 to make. These are hookups. So that I can, if I want to hook up on a project, I can have them, and I have a bunch of those because, well, they're useful. So I have a lot of those. Another type of solder. This is high lead content solder. It's like really nasty stuff, but it's good for most stuff. Lots of switches. I like switches. You never have too many. From that same remote that I could not get to work for anything, it wouldn't even power up, even using the new batteries, so I feel pretty bad that I spent the money on the batteries. And I couldn't find anything wrong with it, but it wouldn't power up, so I pulled some switches off of it, and there's some pretty nice switches in there. Lots of capacitors. I have actually repaired TVs, monitors, things like that with nothing but capacitors on hand. Resistors are a must for most projects. Let's see what else I got in here. There's a special type of capacitor, and I have used several of those. Actually, as you can see, I bought a special pack of them because I needed them. Mono jacks for speakers, so parts to a CD player. This is the spin drive, and then this is the, oh my gosh, this little guy moves the laser back and forth. It's a stepper motor. It's about, I think it's 4 volts. It's not very high voltage. And then little wires for special purposes, hooking up on breadboards, and I got a bunch of those. I try to keep them in their bag, but they don't always stay in their bag. So here's the rest of the salvage stuff from that broken remote, and I just felt really bad that I couldn't fix it, but I got a lot of really cool parts from it that work really well. And I couldn't find anything wrong with the mechanical parts. All I could find wrong with what must have been just the board. More resistors. More resistors. What do we have in here? And specialized resistors. I must have bought these for a special project. 10 ohm 1 watt metal film resistors. And then some more. These look like stereo. These are stereo jacks. So yeah. Lots and lots of stuff. And then these little hookups here are one of the most important things for extra projects. And they look like a solid unit, but they're actually not. They are a bunch of these little guys. And they allow for a project to have power or another component wired on without soldering it. So you just solder this little guy to the board, and then you can use wire clamps. These are really practical for projects that call for a relay. And the only relays I have are not in here. And you can see there's other little parts I made for a special project. These are little copper sleeves that I made for a project several years ago. And I ended up using plastic sleeves instead. That turned out to be more conductive. And these are 12 volt strip lights. You just buy them in big long rolls and you just solder them to them. This is why you have get yourself a nice solder gun, soldering iron, not a solder gun, and you can solder onto these little pads, and anything below 12 volts it will work. You can also pull these little guys off, and if they're white, I think they take about 3.8 volts. So you know, if you got a project that requires some lights, little bitty lights, these guys are the ticket. So anyways, that's what's in the box. And what I'm going to try to make at home inside of this container, along with a future soldering iron and several other parts and components that I typically carry around with me whenever I go do soldering projects. 99.9% of the time, that's a transformer. So let's pause and I will go find those. Okay, so there wasn't a whole lot of actually going and finding. I have all this stuff in a box. So let's talk about this. These little transformers are what you might commonly see around your house. You actually probably have a bunch of these. And this one is 9 volts DC. And these are great and useful because I can wire LEDs straight up to these little guys without too much of a problem, as long as they have a switch and a fuse and connected. Then these guys, these transformers, are a little bit more specialty. They have an input of 120 volts. So anywhere between 110 and 120, and it'll give output of 12.6. That's enough to run LEDs, but I don't think you should. And the reason being is because the electricity is not filtered. I don't know too much about that, so I could not make any recommendations on that. I usually just run them off of these or off of an actual driver. Now this guy is a 24 volt transformer that it got rather recently, and this thing is really cool. I've used it in a few little projects here and there. I don't actually remember where I got it from, but it's been a pretty cool transformer to have on hand. I'm happy that it's 24 volts. This is a relay, and about the biggest relay I've ever seen in my life. I'm sure there's much bigger ones, so you know, no need to educate me on that. So there's a input on the left and the right there, so there's a black and a red, and those input anywhere between 12 and 32 volts, and then the output is the or the switching mechanism, because it's just a, you know, you run your power through this black wire here, and you turn it on, and this thing closes very fast and makes a connection with the two black wires. So it's kind of like a super fast light switch, and it's excellent for repeated turning on and off, because between these two connectors there will get to be some corrosion, and after a while that can cause a short on a regular switch. So you use one of these guys to close it really fast in higher voltage applications, sort of like the solenoid on your car, and that is indeed what this is, a 12 or 24 volt solenoid, and it can handle pretty high amperage current, or pretty high current. It's pretty neat. I've messed with it, but I haven't done that much with it. These are more typical relays, also solenoid powered relays. Lower voltage, I think they can handle, let's see, I can tell you right now. This one can handle 100 volts. Let's see, I'm going to look through the thing. Alright, so it can handle 277 volt AC ballast, 1 horsepower 120 volt motor, 1.5 horsepower 240 volt motor. Can handle a 13 amp 28 volt load, a 20 amp 15 volt, 25 amp 300 volt AC load. So it's a pretty badass little relay. I mean, it's really cool. You can actually pop it apart, but I have not because it is still very good, and it was only used for a little while apparently. Then we have these little relays. These little relays don't... Oh, they do. They can handle 3 amps at 30 volts DC, and I don't think they can handle much else after that. It says something at 200 volts AC. I can't read that. But anyways, there it is. So another relay. And then you got these little guys. These are for wiring stuff in. They're just... It's a bus bar is essentially what it is. And it just pops on and off. And it goes onto a special aluminum rail. And then 24 volt LED lights. I actually have a 115 volt one. But unfortunately, I don't know where it's at because I actually need it. But these are pretty neat little indicator lights. They're high impact, so you can use them in areas that are subject to a lot of moisture or well, even fire actually, because they are fire rated according to the MSDS or the data sheet that was included with the one that I purchased. So, but there you go. Anyways, that is what's in the box.